Frederick, okay.
In 1903, The Great Train Robbery was released. It was considered groundbreaking at the time for its technical achievements, but the most famous scene was the last shot where the main bandit shoots at the screen. It was so effective, people in the audience thought they were being shot at. And thus, this started the trend of violence in movies. And that's what I'm going to inform you on, the historical evolution of violence in movies. Let's begin with our first era, in 1910 to 1940. The 1910s wasn't really realistic. You didn't see much. The only time the hero would ever get into violence if he was pushed to his limit. Famous scene, Birth of a Nation. Have a man getting stabbed in the stomach by a bayonet, you don't see it. These movies were, throughout the 1910s and 20s and early 30s, it was called the pre-code era. That was because in 1933, I believe, the motion picture production code was made. That gave leeway to many films to go farther with their movies and make them more darker. A lot of gangster movies, according to the book Blackout. Now we head on to the 1950s and 1970s. This is where films started to get creative. First, they would show the horrors of war. Many movies in the 50s would do that. But in the 60s, according to 10 Facts About the Shower scene of Psycho, very famous scene where Norman Bates stabs Janet Leigh in the shower. You see blood going down the drain. That's actually chocolate syrup. Filmed in black and white so you didn't give the illusion off. But probably the most famous thing that was invented in the 50s was the squib. Squib is a small explosive you would plant on the actor, and when you set it off, it would shoot fake blood out. It's pretty extreme. Two famous examples of it was Bonnie and Clyde and the Wild Bunch. The latter taking place in the Mexican Revolution, using more blanks in the actual Mexican Revolution. Bonnie and Clyde was very accurate to the source material as well, and the 70s would also use this as well, but go farther with it. Most famous, the Godfather scene of the famous shootout, the famous Tobo shootout. So after that came the 80s and 2000s. This I would consider the gritty era, like the mascot. More realistic, but still kind of not really. They would use squibs to the extreme. The movie RoboCop, according to an article online, the first scene in the movie, or at least one of them, used 200 squibs and had pretty much exploding on the man. Apparently, it hurt him when it happened. It is an explosive, by the way, so it would actually hurt. And he screamed. It screamed it hurt, but the director didn't notice. Apparently, that almost gave the movie an X rating. That's NC-17 for people who don't know the movie ratings pre-1990, I believe. But then the 90s, this is where it got really extreme. Reservoir Dogs showed a man pretty much bleeding out through about half the movie after getting shot, and then also most famously the famous Normandy Beach landing from Saving Private Ryan, which is described by many to be ultra realistic. But after that, the 2000s would pretty much implement what they learned in the 90s and 80s. You know, another famous one being The Passion of the Christ, which the whole last hour is a man getting tortured. And, you know, they would use CGI and like all types of computer effects. And according to a source, I forgot to mention this earlier, they actually used real ammunition in The Birth of a Nation because they didn't have these types of techniques. But now that they do, they can pretty much get away with anything with a computer. So, in conclusion, violence has always been in movies. Even if it didn't start with it, it was always there. And it's come a long way since the bandit shot at the screen. Even the movie Goodfellas and many others recreated it. But, you know, 2000s is still going strong, and only time will tell where it actually goes from here.
Very good.